Welcome to this gentle yoga practice. We'll start by lying down on our backs with a blanket under your head to the degree that works for your body. For many people, having a bit of height, for example, if you take a blanket and fold it in a rather thick but narrow rectangle shape, that can be a nice height for the neck and head. I often like to keep the blanket relatively flat, not folded a lot, but round the edge that's under the neck curve. And so I'll show what that looks like. I place that rolled up blanket under the neck and roll it just so that it meets the flesh of the neck in a way that feels relaxing. For some, this is a really nice strategy. For others, you may need no height at all, or you might want a different shape under the back of your head. The key question in terms of support under your head is whether your chin and neck feel neutral or whether your head feels like it's lifted and your chin is jamming into your chest, or that when you put your head down, it rests in such a way that the back of your neck is foreshortened and your chin is lifting up towards the ceiling. For this position, I would need more height under my head, and then that way I can come to a neutral alignment. No felt sense of stretch here or compression at the back of the head. For myself, I like that little roll, but you can take any little variations on that work for you. We'll start with the feet flat, the knees bent, and the feet right out at the outer edges of your sticky mat. Your arms can stretch out wide like a letter T if you wish, but in principle, the arms really can be wherever they need to be for your comfort. For some, the shoulder joints mean that the arms need to be closer down to your hips, and for others, maybe even a cactus like this might feel better, or even back down on the floor. So take a moment to find a comfortable position for your arms, and with your feet right out at the very edges of your mat, an unusually wide foot position, rock up onto your heels so that only your heels are digging in, the rest of your foot is elevated. And so now as you press your lumbar spine flat into the mat, you can even notice that your pelvis has rotated posteriorly. So that's a flattening of your low back. Keep that pressure of your lumbar spine downward as you let your knees rock from side to side. For some, this feels fine if you keep your back grounded the whole time. And for others, it feels fine to allow your spine, hips, and legs to turn and rotate further to the sides. So the more extreme variation on this would be to roll all the way to the outer right hip, possibly even grounding the outer right leg, and all the way, same thing all the way to the left, or completely maintain the flatness of your low back and only let the legs go so far as there's no rotation onto the outer hip at all. So I usually like to dig in to the mat with my heels, activating my leg muscles as I continue to flex my feet, toes, up towards my knees. Breathing here. Continuing every time I pass through the middle to press the low back flat, maintaining that posterior tilt to the pelvis. Breathing, and best you can, trying not to maintain tension in the neck and in the shoulders. Couple more of these. It becomes an abdominal strengthener because of this squeezing of those lumbar vertebrae and the engagement of your abdominal muscles to keep that lumbar spine pressing downward, decreasing the curvature of your low back into a flattened position. And then gently come on back to the center and draw the knees into the chest as you rock from side to side, just massaging out your back as you roll from side to side. Now from here, I place my feet now at about hips distance, comfortable hips distance, and see if I can start to take my right knee into my hand and circle that knee on the ceiling. Your left leg is really just kind of hanging out there. Your left foot is flat on the mat, and the right hand holding the knee can allow the head of your upper left thigh bone, that head of the femur, relax into the hip joint a little bit more. But if you feel comfortable circling without the movement, or without the support of the hand on the leg, that can mean that your circle gets a bit wider. Not a problem. Then switch the direction. Again, you can check to see, does your leg feel better? Maybe you feel less strain in the hip joint if you hold your leg. I typically hold the kneecap, but you could hold the back of the thigh, as I'm showing here. Really, any way that you choose to hold the leg is fine. And then once again, you could opt to let go of the leg, even putting the hands down on the side of the body onto the floor to support yourself as you rock your hips from side to side. As with the windshield wipers we did just prior, you may need to do this in a way where your back stays pretty flat, as I'm showing here, or you may find that you're okay rolling quite a bit from side to side. My left leg in this case, again, is quite stable, more of a rudder and a stabilizer than actively working. And then we'll switch legs, but first I'll rest and take a breath in and let it go. Notice any difference in sensation from right to left. Then taking hold of that left knee, make a circle with your left knee around. Once again, checking the difference between when you hold the leg and circle with the held leg versus letting go of the leg and circling it freely. As well, you can again explore whether rolling side to side feels appropriate. As I'm showing here, pretty significant rotation through the hips, twisting the spine, or stay flat, much flatter in your low back. There's a little bit of rocking, but basically quite stable through that entire torso. Couple breaths. And slow it down, and we'll switch directions. And each direction can feel quite different. So here's me using the hand again. Sometimes there's a little twang or popping sound. If it doesn't come with pain or strain, then you're fine. It's usually a tendon slipping over a bony prominence or another tendon or body structure. A couple more of these, so round we go. Of course, if the popping does come with discomfort, then we want to back off and move away from discomfort. That's the way we're practicing this gentle yoga, using discomfort as a measure of when we need to stop and back off and modify. All right. Couple more here. Getting some synovial fluid flow in the joints. And then back to the center, and once again, gently rock from side to side. All right, now from here, what I like to do is take the knees, hold them in my hands, flexing the feet, and gently bring the knees in towards the chest. Slowly take the knees out to the sides, wide, then push them away from the chest and together, and pull them back in close. So the knees are each making a circle or circular-ish shape, and it's quite symmetrical from right to left, a little bit like butterfly wings. My feet are flexed, activating the lower leg muscles this way. Toes are spreading wide, activating more muscles in the lower legs and stretching out those toes wide apart, creating a bit more of a felt sense of movement, of work in the feet and lower legs. Then switch it up and go the other way. So circling within the range of motion and to the extent that my legs are comfortable circling. Some people prefer, again, to not hold on to the legs, and that can allow a larger movement, a circle that's wider and longer. Take a couple more. All right, and then super gently plant your feet, reach your legs way down the mat. I happen to have a bolster, so I'll put my feet on top, though it's not necessary. And same with my blanket. I've got one under my wrists. Again, it's fine if it's there. Squeeze the legs together, reach through the fingertips, stretch through the toes. Squeeze the legs together as you cinch your navel into your spine, as if tightening up a string around the waist, but let the shoulders be soft. And then relax everything and pause and take a deep breath in and let it go. Rest now here, or bend those knees if you prefer, and take a moment just to breathe deep into the belly. Fill up the belly from the low to the middle to the upper lungs and let it go. 2 more of those at your own pace. You can work with eyes open or closed. Fill up. 1 more time, deep breath in. Full breath out. Now, taking your strap, we'll open up your strap so that you can take the long edge of your strap and place it underneath your body from left to right. The strap now is serving as a sensory guide to where my lumbar spine is. So what I do is when my strap is underneath my waistline, I pull it from right to left and see if it's movable. If I bring the strap quite low down towards the hips, I can even bring it so low that it's very hard to move. Then I shift it closer to my waistline and now there's quite a bit of space under there. So find that space where the strap becomes movable as you move from your pelvis up towards your waist, and lay the strap across underneath your body, across the mat, at that point where the strap is easy to pull from right to left. Then pull the knees into the chest, gently hug them in, and see if now when you try to pull your strap to either to the right or to the left with one hand, you realize, now my lumbar spine, if I push it down, as we did in the windshield wipers, now my lumbar spine is trapping the strap in place so that it's not movable, or that it's much more difficult for it to move. If you find that the curve of your spine is such that there's no position at which it's completely immovable, not a problem. You simply work at the position where it's least mobile, where you can almost keep it from moving, and that's plenty. So now, holding on with just one side, I'm going to pull with my left arm this time, though you could pull with either right or left. Perhaps I'll pull with my right, and that way you can see me pulling. So as I pull to the right, trying to maintain the strap without its mobility, and then I'll start to do toe taps. Yeah, so I'm pulling to the right, but not with my left hand. I'm only pulling to one side. It's cheating to pull with both sides, just saying. So we tap the toes in and down, and all the while, try to keep your low back flat. It increases the amount of effort, typically, that one applies when one has a measure of how well and how much the lumbar spine is able to push into the mat. This engages your abdominal muscles, rectus abdominis, as well as your other 3 muscle layers in the abdominal area. Pressing down, toe tapping. Now, resting when you need to is key. So whenever you need to take a break, just plant your feet, rest, and let your arms go. So no pressure to keep going when you're starting to feel fatigue. If you don't feel fatigue, you can allow this toe tapping to keep going. Toes alternately tapping, pulling on your strap. You can always switch sides, pull with the other hand. If your one arm is getting tired, keep that focus right on that lumbar spine, pressing into your strap. Exhaling every once in a while to let go of some of that stale air. Flat, 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 your back. And then release. Once more, let's stretch. Reach your legs long down the mat, placing them on top of any bolsters that may be there, reaching your arms in the opposite direction, and you can even point and flex your feet and spread and crunch your fists. Yeah, so fists to palms wide, point and flex those feet. Just get a little blood flow in your extremities, circle your wrists and ankles. All right, and then gently bend those knees, pull them into your chest, and rock from side to side, massaging out your back. All right, so now we'll move your blanket out from under your hips, or excuse me, your head, so that we can do some bridge pose work. And for that, I'll take a block and place it between my inner knees, right up at the top of my bent legs like this. So if I put my hands on top of my kneecaps, the block is so high that my thumbs can easily rest right on top of the block. So the block is really almost at the very edge of where your knees end. Then I place my feet flat. Spread your toes and best you can, despite the fact that we can't see our feet in this position, turn all 10 toes straight forward down to the foot of your mat and try to eliminate any temptation for your heels to pull in or out. You want, as best you can, your feet to be lined up like two cars parked on your mat with the vertical axis of your mat lined up with your feet. Reaching down for the outer edges of your mat, press your lumbar spine flat. We're back at posterior tilt, which is where we were before. Now notice your neck and see if you rock to the right side, if you can gently tuck your left shoulder blade in and underneath your rib cage. Then lean left and lift and tuck your right shoulder blade in and under. Now, for many people, there may be a space in the mid-spine underneath your rib cage, which feels lifted, quite natural because of the shoulder blade movement. So now I slightly lift my tailbone, stretch my lengthen the lumbar spine, and now re-flatten out the back from the middle down to the flattening of the sacrum. Now squeeze your block and slowly lift your hips up, any amount. For some, lifting the hips means that you lift, but not very high, because we don't need to lift super high to get the benefit. Lots of benefits to doing bridge lifts if they work for your body. Number one, the question is whether there's any knee pain. So hopefully no knee pain here. I do like to flatten my back, then squeeze the buttocks, and then scoop the belly down as I lift the hips up, and then feel the weight shift into the shoulders and relax my neck. And then I'll lower down vertebra by vertebra from top to bottom, and your spinal cord is like a bicycle chain being rested down link by link, dink, 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 until your back is flat. Inhale when you're down. Let that lumbar spine lift off and arch, and then flatten, squeeze the buttocks, cinch up your waistline again as if tightening a belt, and lift the pelvis. Relax your chin. Sometimes I even shift my head backwards to lengthen my neck. Instead of feeling that there's any shortness to the neck, I let the lengthening of the neck move my head backwards. And lower down, vertebra by vertebra, as best you can. Articulate through those pairs of vertebra all the way down. Inhale, gentle arch to the spine. Exhale, flatten the spine, squeeze the buttocks, stomp the heels, lift the hips, and breathe. For some, it's nice, weirdly pleasant to reach the arms straight up like a zombie. Taking a breath or two here, breathing into your pose. Coming down before you feel depleted, tired, uncomfortable, and slowly relax. Now keep your low back pressing flat and see if for you the interlace of your fingers behind your head. Rest your head upon your hands and rest your hands on the floor if that's workable for your hands and arms. If not, you can always tent your fingers around your skull, but rest your skull on the mat and simply use your fingertips gripping that jawbone right up below your ear and your fingers arrayed around your ear there. You can keep your elbows wide like this or go back to the interlace. Now we'll add the lift of your shoulders up to the hip lift, and first action is to press your low back flat. Now, from the muscles between your pelvis and your rib cage, rather than using your neck, we use your abdominal muscles to lift your shoulders as you gaze up and back. Then lower your head and shoulders down, scoop your belly, lift your hips up for bridge pose. Then vertebra by vertebra, down you go, and as your hips lower, you lift your shoulders up, rest your head back, let your head fall, neck soft, and lift the hips into bridge pose. 2 more times as you lengthen the spine. Let your arms lift your head, but let your head fall back into your hands. Relax and lengthen the neck 1 more time. Shoulder blades lift, gazing back at the ceiling behind you. Lift your hips. And 1 more time, lower your head. Now that's, again, reach your arms up towards the ceiling. Sometimes people like to gently rock a little bit from side to side here with your fingertips pointing straight up. Stomping with your heels, spread the toes, squeeze the buttocks, and massage the space between your shoulder blades. You can even lightly walk your shoulders away from your ears, as I'm showing here. A little bit lift up my right shoulder, pull it down towards my hip, then the left, then the right, then the left. And gently rocking side to side, I'll slowly lower down, keeping my arms reaching up, and then bring the knees into the chest and rock side to side, massaging out your back as you go from side to side. Now, I'll take my block away and pull my strap back into play. Because I'm going to be working my lower body, I'm going to put a blanket back under my head and neck. For some, this next one will benefit quite a bit from you adding a second blanket or a bolster. For some, a bolster would be excessive, so you may not need or want it. But a folded blanket back into this one that I showed earlier. I call it the strudel fold for obvious reasons. Now, you can put your sacrum on that strudel, apple, spinach, feta, whatever a strudel you like. And here we are. My sacrum being elevated here means that for some of us, the low back will feel quite well supported in a way that's quite significantly different than what you feel when you don't elevate your hips. You can add also the blanket under your head and neck if you wish. For some, this actually feels like a fully supportive position, the height of the head being the lowest height, which affords you a comfortable neck. We don't want to excessively elevate the head, particularly because we've elevated the hips as well. We don't want to curl ourselves up into a little ball. But for some, this will be a very comfortable adaptation, particularly if you have a long torso. Now for me, I have a short torso and I don't really need that blanket, so I'm going to move it aside for now and focus on making a loop in the strap. So what we need is a loop that when you hold on to the 2 ends of the buckle, it's tight. In other words, you can put your legs inside the loop and push it wide, and the buckle is not loose and sliding open. You want to be able to lock out your buckle. Okay? So once you have a strap, bring it so that you can bring it around your legs and tighten the loop so that your legs are just about hips distance apart, slightly wider. I'd rather have you go slightly on the wider side than have them be more narrow than your hip points. This is really more like outer hip distance, when I push my knees right to left with my feet flat and my knees bent and my legs gently hugging into the chest. I have the knees end up about outer hip width, and you can hold on to the legs here, and this can be super nice, especially if you're dealing with sensitivity in your low back. And notice, too, the position of my knees. My knees can be closer into my chest, which allows me to flatten my back much more easily and feel very well supported. And I can move my knees so that they're above my hips and add this extra layer of action in the core muscles to keep my back flat. So you can start, let's begin by simply moving your legs closer and then further forward, only to the degree that your back feels well supported, not overloaded. Begin to push your feet, if you haven't already, and legs sideways in your strap so that you're simultaneously stretching your strap from right to left and moving your thighs any amount towards your chest and away. For some, the movement will be really small. So if I put my hands on my thighs or knees, I can just barely move them, a couple, 3, 4 inches or so. For others, it'll feel comfortable to push the legs with the hands and to push the hands with the legs, so you get pressure both right to left as well as front to back. Flattening your low back the whole time. You might start to feel that your legs are really tired because you've got action going in multiple different directions. 2 more of these if you're okay, but stop when you need to. And then, plant your feet. Now I like to take a break, and for that I'll just take my strap down to the ankles and gently rock my knees from side to side. So it's a very casual windshield wiper here. My feet aren't as wide as they normally would be, but it's a little more relaxing than doing it with the strap around the thigh bones above the knees as they were before. All right, and so let's find our strap once more. Now, the same position is here, where we take your strap above your kneecap and bend your knees, flex your feet, and draw the knees just a little bit closer than hip distance, or then instead of knees over hips, you pull the knees in a little closer. Flex your feet and then see if you can pull your strap from right to left. You could even use your hands to push the strap wide and bring your inner feet together. Keep the strap pushing and bring your feet outside of the thigh line and in and out. So this is a pincer maneuver, and I'll show it from the front so you can see that I'm pigeon-toeing my thighs and then keeping the knees wide, bringing the feet together. The knees do not change in terms of distance, but the thigh bone is rotating, interior, exterior, interior or internal rotation, external rotation. So we do these pincer maneuvers so you feel sort of like a crustacean. Think lobster, right? Crab. Pincer maneuver, keeping the lumbar spine flat, squeezing the legs apart, and keeping the knees wide, pincer the legs. All right, and then plant those feet. Put your strap down to the ankles again. Rest your feet on the floor and gently, slowly let the knees drop from side to side. Softening the belly, relaxing your feet, letting your legs gently breathe and let go. Yeah, all right. So from here we have one more to do, which is a twist. We flex the feet, bend the knees, reach the arms out wide like the letter T, and tuck the shoulders away from the ears. Let the knees be as close as they need to be to your chest. You could be at a 90-90-90 position, 90 at the feet, 90 at the knees, 90 at the hips, or you can pull the knees in closer depending on how your back feels. If you have the blanket under your sacrum, keep it there. It's totally fine. Now as we twist to the right, keep your shoulder blades grounded. Gently turn your chin slightly left, and as you pull to the right with your right leg, pull to the left with your left leg. It's okay to lightly tap your right baby toe side of your foot down, pushing into the floor. Then super slowly flattening out your back, posterior tilt to the pelvis, press the lumbar spine. We go over to the left. Now at any point, if you need to take a break, you simply relax the lateral pressure. Just let your legs rotate, let the strap be slack. It doesn't need to be tight if you're getting tired. Couple more of these, because boy, I find that this is a lot of work, so no need to overwork. Indeed, we don't want to. So allow yourself to make this into a much more gentle variation, which means you really don't have to push very hard. But just a little bit of pressure right to left can be all that's needed to keep the strap long. But again, once again, you can just bring the legs over without the strap tightening. Let's do 2 more in whichever mode works for you. Keeping the arms and shoulders grounded, only tilting so far as your arms and shoulders stay grounded. Last one. And super gently come on back to the center. Let's take the strap away and hold on to the kneecaps as you draw a circle on the ceiling with your knees. Nice and slowly massage out your lumbar spine. Feel that low back relaxing. Deep breath in, full breath out. Then pause and go the other way. Round and round you go. Really noticing the ease in your lumbar spine, the flattening of your middle of your back, the center of the target, Breathing and relaxing. Round and round you go. All right. And now from here, we'll come into a prone position where we'll open up a blanket so that we have a soft support and work into our Shalabhasana or locust pose. And for this, I like to add some padding underneath my front body so that the hard, cold, sticky mat doesn't dig in, the bones don't dig into it. And now for some, it's super helpful to add another layer of blanket in which I've taken not only a strudel, but actually rolled it up a little bit higher, create a kind of a casual roll, and that will go underneath the tops of my feet. That will allow me to rest on my front body with my feet over this slight height, which allows me to have much less of a feeling of cramping in my feet or discomfort in the toe joints, which can sometimes happen. So we'll start by bringing your two palms flat on the sticky mat and resting your forehead there on your palms, turning your nose straight down and breathing. Now from here, we separate the feet hips distance. Allow your nose to point straight down. And if you need a different level of support under your head, you could, for example, put your fists on top of each other. For others, it'll feel just fine to bring your forehead down and tuck your chin. So please feel free to take any of those options. We start by pressing your pubic bone deep into the blanket, scooping the belly upward. Squeeze your buttock muscles. And now reach one hand to your lumbar spine and relax. Now let's repeat. Pubic bone press. Belly button lifts, squeeze the buttocks. Notice the flattening of your lumbar spine up towards the ceiling. We're in our posterior tilt position, just as we've been in many times so far, but now we're in the prone or resting on your front body position. Now stretch through your knees, keep the pubic bone pressing, scoop the belly up, and stretch through your left leg, get long through the leg and lengthen it to lift it. And slowly lower down as soon as you're ready. For some, you'll barely lift the leg at all, and it's totally fine to focus more on the lengthening as I lengthen my right leg and lift only to the height that feels quite well within your range of motion without strain or pain. Pressing the pubic bone down, maintaining the posterior tilt. See if you can keep your hip points grounded as you lift the legs, alternating leg lifts. Reach backwards and then upwards. Breathing as you go. Backwards, upwards. One more time on the right. Press the pubic bone, reach back and up. And then super gently bend those knees, flex your feet, and rock your shins from side to side. So we're massaging out the front of the hips and the pelvis. We'll add a second variation, which is to slowly circle your shins around and around and around. And then switch it up and circle the other way. Round and around and around. All right, and then from here, what I often like to do is take a low Shalabhasana where I press the pubic bone down, scoop the belly up, squeeze the buttocks, and float the forehead just a tiny bit. Stretch through the knees and keep the lower legs, tops of feet grounded. If there's no strain or pain, I might float my feet just a teeny bit above the level of the support below them. Then either staying here or pull the elbows back and reach my fingertips back for what I call low Shalabhasana. My chin is neutral, my neck is long, my shoulder blades are pulling down my back, and I'm not trying to lift everything up. That would be full Shalabhasana. This is a low hovering Shalabhasana. Breathing as you turn your chin slowly from left to right. Breathing into your low Shalabhasana. Take your time. Turning the chin to relax your neck. And then resting down and gently just swish your buttocks from side to side, resting your palms under your forehead And let the thighs roll. So you're rolling across your thigh bones. Heels are wagging from side to side. Now, for some people, it's really easy to push up from this prone position into hands and knees. But for others, it might feel a little tenuous in terms of how your back is or other body parts. So I like to slowly roll to the side, bend the knees, and use my arms to come up where I maintain my torso as if it were a cereal box. So that can be a way to keep your back neutral, where you're not bending forward or back or side to side, but you're working with your spine pretty stable and your shoulders and hips quite square with each other. Okay, so that's one thing to think about when you're dealing with back sensitivity. Now, I do like to pad the knees for a hands and knees position, and I also like to be sure that you have the option to put your forearms down instead of your palms. Sometimes people find that when they put their hands flat, the pressure on the wrists is just not quite manageable. It's uncomfortable for many, many different reasons. So I'll offer to put the forearms on middle height blocks. You can tilt them in towards each other and place your palms together. I like that because it kind of completes the circuit of the upper body, but you need not. You can simply have your forearms like the number 11 pointing straight forward. Totally fine. Again, I'm going to turn my blocks in slightly and take the palms together just as another option. And then I'll make sure that my blanket is far enough back that I can bring my hips over my knees and my shoulders over my elbows without too much effort. There we go. All right. So here we are, nice long body. Now, knees and feet hips distance apart. Scoop the belly in, lengthen through the spine, and push your elbows, forearms, or palms down into the floor to lift your shoulders as high as they'll go. Then as we scoop the belly for cat pose, we drop the chin to the chest and draw the navel in and up, pushing the mat away with your knees, your forearms, your elbows, scooping the belly in and tucking the chin to the chest. Then we reverse that curve without shrugging the shoulders. Indeed, we draw the shoulder blades away from the ears, float the chin high, lift the buttock bones, and move the mid-spine down without dumping your belly. And exhale, scoop and curl, cat pose. And squeeze the shoulder blades together as you arch your spine in the opposite direction. For some people, it can be super helpful to leave out cow, for example, if you're dealing, for example, with stenosis, and sometimes people with sciatica find that cat pose is okay, but cow pose can be a pose that triggers discomfort. But for some of us, cat pose, if you drop your chin, can be problematic, for example, in sciatica. So you might do this, cat, cow, without moving your head. Or you might do cat without moving your head, and then leave out the cow. So this is cat, no head tuck, and cow. For some, cat's fine, head tuck is fine, but cow not so great. So here's cat to neutral. And then finally, cat, cow again. Now, of course, you may be a person who can really do cow, but cat doesn't feel good. No problem. You just leave out the cat. Yeah, so modulate these poses. Now, last but not least, I love to stretch the lumbar a little bit more intensely by drawing my hips backwards in cat pose. Then come back into cow in the regular fashion with the weight back over elbows and knees evenly. Then scoop up and back into cat and shift forward through cow. Let's do 2 more. Cat and cow. 1 more time. Cat and cow. Now, for some, child's pose is a real favorite, whereby you bring your knees wide, maybe you bring your big toes to touch, let the buttocks sink back and down. And for many people, the buttocks do not go very far towards the heels. Here's my demonstration of hips high child's pose. But for others, the hips can and are comfortable dropping, but perhaps you like to keep your head and shoulders somewhat lifted. And that can be fine, especially if you're usually working with your head above your heart and or you need to prevent too much flexion of your spine. Finally, for some, it's really nice to come fully down into your child's pose, option to reach the arms forward. Though for shoulder comfort, sometimes people wrap the arms all the way around the body and even turn the head to one side. If you're comfortable in child's pose, please feel free to take it and take 3 deep belly breaths. But for some of us, we need to do the following. Instead of doing regular child's pose, we'll flip over onto our back and pull the knees into the chest, because compression of hips, knees, and ankles for some of us just doesn't work. And we don't want to miss out on child's pose entirely, so we can do this upside down one. Breathing again, belly, ribs, collarbone, fill up completely. And you can add the rocking or no, just breathing and letting go. One more time, nice deep breath in, full breath out. All right, very good. So from here, once again, I'll roll to the side and use my arms to help me come up, keeping my spine pretty quiet as compared to the pelvis, not going into a lot of bending or flexing of the spine. I'll move the blankets aside so that I can do some standing pose work without slipping. And I'll come into my Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1 pose. I like to do it with blocks, and we'll be using the blocks, taking your right leg forward and your left leg back, finding your way up into Warrior 1 pose. In principle, the feet can be pretty far apart from front to back, but I like to make sure that my back foot is only so far back that the heel is quite comfortable. For some people, if you elevate the heel, for example, onto a blanket fold, that elevation of the heel can be instrumental in creating a comfortable place for your ankle, knee, and hip. So please feel free to add a little height under your heel. Could be that you put a slant board under there. Now I'm going to take my 2 blocks and bring them together like 2 pages of a book. And as I step my feet about hips width distance, as if on railroad tracks, I turn my right toes all 5 forward, stomp my right heel, and lift and lower my left heel a few times. This is allowing me to place my left foot at an angle that the foot naturally falls into, which means that it's pretty likely to be a reasonable, comfortable placement for my foot. Now push through the right heel and square your shoulders and your head to the short edge of your mat, but don't worry about trying to bring your left hip forward. Instead, square your shoulders and ribs, and as you push into your right heel, pull your elbows down. Now push your blocks together as you tuck your chin and reach your blocks any amount to the ceiling, lengthening up, keeping the chin tucked. Breathe and reach. Push the blocks together, and then slowly bring your blocks forward and all the way back behind you. Squeeze your shoulder blades together, press through your right heel, straighten your right leg. Whew, take a break. One more time, bend that right knee. Bring your blocks back in front of you. Bring your elbows together, press your shoulder blades down your back as you press your blocks together. Slightly tuck your chin and push your blocks together and reach them up. For some, the blocks will stay here in front of you, knees, elbows bent. And for others, they might reach overhead. But support your shoulder joint as you need to. And then open up your blocks wide, 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 bending your elbows as you need to, and then bring them once more behind you. Press into your right heel, squeeze your shoulder blades, straighten your right leg. And then turn your right toes in and heel, toe, heel, toe. All right, very good. We'll do Warrior 1 on the second side. Give the legs a little shake. Now we'll bring your left leg forward and your right leg back. Once more, the feet are about hips distance apart from right to left, as if you're on railroad tracks. Palms against the blocks, blocks together. I press through my left heel, squeeze my right buttock, turn my shoulders and head to face the short edge of my mat, and lift and lower my right heel a few times. Lifting and lowering, squeezing the blocks together. Now, press through your left heel, squeeze the right buttock, lift the sternum, elbows together, drop the chin, and push the blocks forward and up. lifting and lengthening. Again, the blocks may stay in front of you. Elbows might stay bent, or you might even find your shoulder joint is okay, coming all the way up, but notice the chin is not lifting. Breathe. Then sweep the arms slowly down and back, squeeze the shoulder blades together, press through your left heel. You can lean your torso forward if there's any felt sense of compression in your low back. Slowly come on back to blocks together, elbows down, chin soft. Push your blocks together and lift up. Squeezing the buttocks. Lift your ribs out of your hips and slowly separate your blocks, widen your arms back and all the way behind you like you're wearing a superhero cape. Squeeze your shoulder blades and straighten your left knee. Turn your left toes in. Toe, heel, and out you come. All right. So now we'll take your block between your thigh bones. For some, this is quite comfortable. It comes right up between the thighs, no problem. For others, maybe you turn the block lengthwise, you bring it a little lower. And for others, it might feel better if you put your block between your ankle bones. It's not between my toes, it's just between the ankle bones. But it allows me to have a block that I'm squeezing between my legs. My knees are slightly bent, and I'm squeezing my feet into the block. The thighs come towards each other, though, but because of the block, they may not touch. Okay? So I tend to like the block up closer to the pelvis, but please feel free to make sure that your block is comfortable. In fact, you might not use it at all. Whether you have a block or no, bring your feet so all 10 toes point straight forward. Micro-bend your knees, and then squeeze your block, or if you're not using a block, spread your feet, squeeze your buttocks, draw your inner thighs together, and lift your navel. Okay? Now release the arms, and take your left arm in front of you. I'll mirror you here. Left arm reaches across as you twist to the right, then twist to the left as your left arm opens and you breathe and look down to that left side. And then again, twist over to the right, elbow leads as you twist to the left. Twist to the left, that's right. Twisting and around and open. And one more time, twist and open. Pause, come back to the center and roll your shoulders forward, up and back and down. Forward, up and back. If it doesn't feel good on your neck, you might do elbow-mediated shoulder rolls like this, where your elbows lead. All right, and shake your wrists. Good. Now let's do the second side. We're squeezing your block, lifting your navel, engaging your buttocks, and lead with that right elbow, twisting to your right. And then again, twist left. Right arm comes across the body, up and over your head. 2 more times, breathing, exhaling, and 1 more time, breathe in, and exhale. Come on back to the center, and 1 more time, slow shoulder rolls, with or without your arms. I like to do the elbow-mediated shoulder rolls because by using my elbows, I can find a little less strain in my neck and shake out. All right. Now, from here, we'll be taking Prasarita Padottanasana, wide-legged forward fold using 2 blocks. I'll put 1 block tall, 2nd block tall, and then step my feet comfortably wide apart and orient the 5 toes of each foot so they're straight forward, and the center lines of my feet are lined up with the short edges of my mat. Now, for some people, when they do this wide-legged forward fold, the heels coming in and the toes out with the knees wide is a modification that for some of us can feel extremely helpful. So if you try the classic orientation, all 10 toes pointing straight forward like this, doesn't feel good, then pull the heels in and the toes out. Just make sure that if you bend your knees, even a little bit, the knees go right over your toes, keeping the angle of that thigh bone at the same angle as your toes are pointing. Now, for some, 2 blocks stacked like this with either some gentle pressure on the block or even just very light. You can even put your forearms there if you need to take the weight off your wrists. This can be a very nice flat back variation. For others, 2 blocks tall, 1 under each shoulder, can feel really helpful. And then lastly, you can scooch back a little bit, shift your buttocks behind your heels, and then even walk your blocks forward, taking a variation on downward facing dog, which for some is really nice because the weight on your hands and arms is so small that you can easily even just lightly tap the floor or not even really press it much, if at all. I'll show from the side what I mean here as you're in your Prasarita Padottanasana, your wide-legged forward fold. The buttocks shift behind your hips as much as you need them to counterbalance the weight of your trunk, which means that now your hands can be super light and your spine can focus on lengthening. If you can put weight on your hands, then that's fine. You can add some weight pushing down into your blocks, and you can even lift your buttock bones to be right between your heels. Ultimately, that's where the hips would go in wide-legged forward fold. Breathing, taking your time, making sure you're not locking out your knees. If you prefer no blocks here, you might tent your fingertips to the mat. Breathing, spreading your toes, cinching your navel, noticing that the knees can straighten by lifting the buttock bones, pulling the kneecaps up, but rather than pushing your knees back in space, feel that you're pulling your buttock bones up towards the ceiling. That's how the knee straightening occurs. Breathe and allow your head to hang if you wish. And finally, you can allow your upper body to hang if that works for you. But for some, hanging in this manner is not as comfortable as flat back. Breathing into it, we'll come back to flat back, taking your time. So here I'm in a flat back variation. I'm keeping my chest long. If you're hanging, you might change the cross of the arms. Take another breath or two and notice where the weight is in your feet. And see if you can bring the weight mostly into your legs out of your hands. And then slowly one hand to each hip, and then we'll heel toe, heel toe, heel toe, 1 foot in, and then step together and shake everything out. Gently, gently shake. That's it. All right. Now let's come on down to do a gentle hamstring stretch before we finish. And for this, I'll be using a strap loop. For some, it will be comfortable to eliminate the strap loop and simply use the strap as a straight line. You don't need to use it in a loop format. But if you're okay with it, here's how you could work with it. Okay, so what we would do here is place your strap around your foot like so. Now the loop is quite long, and once again the buckle is tight so that I can use it as a loop that's not going to slide or move or change its length. And with my left foot flat and my left knee bent, my head supported on a level of height that feels easeful and comfortable for my neck, then I take the strap loop and see, I wonder if I can put it behind the back of my head, above my ears, where roughly my baseball cap or maybe Bjorn Borg's sweatband would be around the skull. And for some, the strap will sit easily behind your head could rest on the blanket, and now you could do a hamstring stretch without having to hold on to the strap at all, which can be really nice for the shoulders. Your knee might not be straight. This right knee here might not be straight. Totally fine if you need to keep the knee bent. You could stretch your down leg long if you wish. For some, it feels better to keep it flat, particularly if you have tenderness in your low back. So we breathe into it. And then finally, you can bend and straighten that right knee, point and flex the foot as you wish. And now, for those of you for whom this just doesn't feel so good and you want to take the head out of the loop, you simply hold on to the strap like so. Breathing. Now, last but not least, sometimes people find that even though if the strap loop is smaller, your head might not come all the way to the blanket, but that having your head gently lifted inside the loop can be strangely pleasant for the neck. So I often will do a hamstring stretch in this manner where, again, my right knee need not be straight. In fact, it can be pretty bent. I often like to massage the back of the knee, the back of the hamstring a little bit as I work this way. And notice that my head is dangling inside the strap loop, not touching the blanket. And strangely enough, for many people, this is quite relaxing for the neck. It does have the look of a neck stretch, but for most people when they do this, there isn't a feeling of stretch in the neck. Though I like to start with the version 1 or 2, the head on the blanket with the strap, or the head on the blanket without the strap first, and then see if people would like to try this version 3. Finally, of course, you can straighten your right knee, straighten your left leg, and even point through your feet and flex them alternately, a little knee bend and a little knee straighten as well. So these are gentle, slow movements you can add. When you feel that hamstring stretch has gone to the extent you're comfortable with, then you gently grab the strap with your 2 hands, release it from the back of your head and rest your head down. Then slowly take your left foot up into the strap and lengthen the loop in case you might want to try on this side, the way the strap is underneath the back of your head, but resting on the blanket. Yeah, so if you have a shorter strap, you might even put 2 together so that you have enough loop length to allow for you to rest your head and have your foot up in the strap loop. Remember, of course, that your bottom leg, the one that's not in the strap, could extend, but for some it feels better to keep that down leg bent. And then finally, you can take your head back to the blanket, make your loop smaller once more, and try the second side. Both sides can be very different, as you probably already know, and so we're not forcing or making any assumptions. Again, I often like to point and flex the toes of both feet, point and flex the feet, and straighten and bend the knees, even the right knee when the left leg is in the loop. Letting the head rest heavily. It dangles, it bobs, but it doesn't actually touch the blanket. Now slowly I take hold of the strap, remove it so my head rests down, and then I take the strap away, bringing the knees into the chest, rock side to side. Now my favorite version of Shavasana, or deep relaxation, involves taking the 2 blocks and placing a bolster over the blocks, creating what I call Stonehenge, and that can allow me to rest my hips and my back in a way that can be quite profound. When you place your calves over the bolster, make sure that the back of your knee is against the bolster, that it isn't just like this where your ankles are on the bolster and you're resting and your knees are in free space. Instead, you tuck up against the bolster just enough so that the lower thigh, back of knee, and calf, top of your calf, is on the bolster, and your hips are on the mat. And of course, if it's chilly, it's good to cover up during Shavasana. In some disciplines, people prefer to keep a little air flowing, but give yourself a chance to take any support that you need, including extra warmth. Allow yourself now to settle in, to settle down. I'm going to open up my blanket a little bit so I have a little less height under my head, facilitating over time the posture where the back of your head, the back of your shoulder blades, your sacrum, are all at the same height. Now allow yourself to settle in, to settle down, and to completely let go.